Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us here for another episode, wherever in the world you are listening to us from, whatever platform you're listening to us on. Thank you so much for the support. Thank you for sharing the show. Thank you for the kind messages and the feedback you guys have left me. Really appreciate it. And kind of crazy that we're getting down to year 2 already of the show, which is awesome. And today's topic is one that I'm really looking forward to getting into as somebody who really likes talking defense and talking about getting back and being ready to go in that next play mentality on defense. We're going to spend today's episode focusing on getting back in transition and some defensive principles in general. As we know, the game is played really fast paced. There's a lot of up and down, back and forth, almost looks like a track meet sometimes. And you guys listening know how important it is to make sure that your guys or girls are back in transition, ready to defend and not giving up easy baskets after a missed shot. So that's what we're going to get into today. So if you like defense like myself, this is going to be a good one. I'm very happy to be joined as my guest to discuss this topic. The varsity assistant coach at Bel Air High School out in El Paso, Texas. My guest today is Coach David Hernandez. Coach, how are you doing?
Doing good. Thank you for having me. I appreciate this opportunity to talk a little defense, talk a little transition defense with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about time I got somebody with the last name Hernandez on here anyway.
Yeah.
So there we go. We got that going.
Yeah.
Coach, let's start with your basketball journey, your coaching journey. Where's the game taking you? Where's your coaching journey taking you? And what got you out to Bel Air?
Sure. Growing up here in El Paso, Texas, for those of the listeners that might not be very familiar with the area, we have a very, very rich history here in El Paso. In 1966, Texas Western, led by Don Haskins, very famous name throughout the basketball world. They won a NCAA championship over the University of Kentucky. So I've been very fortunate in this area that, it's kind of a basketball crazy area because of Coach Haskins and because of everything that team, accomplished back in the 60s, but, kind of still lives on today. So, I grew up in a basketball family. My mom coached basketball, played basketball. My dad coached basketball, played basketball. My older brother and older sister were also basketball players, and, looking up to them, just being in the gym every other weekend or, all throughout the week, going to practices, it was very, very easy to fall in love with the game at an early age. And, starting off playing at a very young age and also being very impressionable, growing up in the era that I did, getting the tail end of Michael Jordan's basketball career and, watching Kobe Bryant with the Lakers early on in his career, I was very, very impressionable at that age. So it was, watching those guys, watching my brother and sister, watching my mom and dad, it started from there. And the love affair hasn't ended yet. And I don't think it ever will.
Yeah, that's a true basketball family for sure. No, that's
Yeah.
cool. That's cool to hear that, and do you have like times growing up like playing basketball, playing pickup, shooting hoops like that? Was that part of the deal?
Oh, definitely. So, constantly competing with my brother who's about 8 years my senior. So, he would always kick my butt, and my sister was the same. But, a lot of lessons early on from them about, how to play up, how to compete against higher competition and that sort. And, my basketball playing days, I was fortunate enough to play at Bel Air High School, where I'm actually a coach now. So I played varsity basketball for 4 years there. And then my coaching career kind of took off once I started getting into the college years. So I went to UTEP, which is here, the university here in El Paso. And, kind of like a lot of former players at an early age, you're kind of like, yeah, I would never coach. I saw what my coach went through. I would never want to do that to myself. But then once you get that first taste of coaching a team, it kind of flips a switch. And that's kind of what happened to me. I started coaching my little cousin's fourth and fifth grade basketball team, and it was kind of like a switch went off. That's kind of
Yeah,
my
got the itch.
aha moment. Yeah, it was the itch, and it hasn't gone away. So, coached throughout college, coached elementary level, coached middle school, and then once I graduated from college, I was very fortunate to get a job right away, which is kind of hard in the field that I picked, which is physical education. It's very hard to get those type of positions, but I was very fortunate enough to get one right away. My first year out of college, I was coaching basketball at a school here, Coronado High School, under a great coach, Peter Morales, who, it was kind of like you think you know what you're talking about basketball wise, playing all your life, seeing it all your life, and then you go, get to work under a coach like that, and it's like, whoa, you get a master class early on. So I was very fortunate with that. My second year, I moved districts, and again, I was very fortunate to coach under, as a freshman coach, under Javier Vela at Riverside High School, and again, just first class program, a great opportunity for me to learn and grow, and then that led to ultimately my third year, third school in 3 different years. But it was kind of a really good point for me because an opportunity came up in my old high school that I attended, that I played at, for the coach that I played for.
Oh, that's great. That's crazy.
So it's kind of a opportunity that I was just like really fortunate to have. So that's kind of where I'm at now under Rob Deibler. I was a freshman coach my first year, and then the last 6 years I've been the varsity assistant, which you mentioned earlier, and kind of the de facto defensive coordinator, if you will. So I've been very fortunate and blessed to be in the position that I'm at right now, and learned under so many great programs, great coaches, and seen, a lot of basketball.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the tough things about if you jump around and take a bunch of, you have different positions every year, but then one of the nice things about that is you just learn under so many different people. You get exposed to so many different things and so many different styles and different environments that it's like its own unique experience that you get like when you're constantly have a changing environment and changing program that you're in. So there's kind of goods and bads of both of it for sure.
Definitely.
You mentioned, and I want to talk about the fact that you are a PE teacher, and as an educator myself, I'm in the history department nowadays, and I'm always interested to hear from the PE teachers about what they think of like the current state of like physical education. And I know it kind of varies region to region, state to state, but I just kind of want to pick your brain a little bit about what you see as like the current state of PE. What do you like? Is there anything that you would change, and just how that's going in general?
Sure. So I've been a physical educator now for the last 8 years, and it has changed within those 8 years. When I first started physical education, there was a lot of, I've been very fortunate, and I landed at a great school that had a great history of building, PE program, one that was kind of like recognized throughout our state at Glen Cove Elementary. We had a former coach who I actually, replaced because he retired, who built a program from scratch and was involved in a lot of curriculum throughout the state of Texas. So, we were very, very, involved in a bunch of things, from health and nutrition to socialization skills to social emotional learning, and which we continued. And the recently in the last 2 years, obviously with the pandemic, it's kind of set everybody back, including physical education. because of, numerous factors of things that affected, our students away from us. The inactivity, the sedentary kind of lifestyle that a lot of us lived, that was very unfortunate for a lot of us, but we lived through for about a year and a half without any, stimulation or the ability to go out there and participate in things that our kids
Yeah.
normally got to. So it had a very negative impact on our students, in that way. But now that we're kind of hopefully at the tail end of this pandemic, we've started kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel and being able to get back to kind of the things that we were more accustomed to before the pandemic hit.
Yeah, it's really interesting how like there's so much that we kind of have to recover from COVID and everything like that, and educational practices and the effect that it's had, on our players and our students. And like you mentioned, it's like a recovery period, and then you got to have like a lot of grace, and you got to have a lot of time to just sort of build all those things back, because like I said, a lot is lost, but hopefully, like you said, things are kind of getting back in the swing of it. Things are kind of getting back to whatever feels like normal, and kind of like build and do all the things that you kind of want to do that maybe you were able to normally do before COVID and everything.
Right. Yeah. And
Mhm.
you could see it kind of in our daily routines now. There was a lot of loss of like normal progress, normal skill acquisition that our students
Mhm.
had, especially from a young age to now. I mean, um, our kids are having trouble with, motor control or hand-eye coordination, when before that really wasn't a problem,
Yeah.
just progressing normally. Socialization was another really, really big key, where we had a lot of kids come back and they were just, lost in how to interact with each other and how to play again. So that was a big thing that we had to kind of overcome, and knowing that they'll be in a safe environment, they don't have to worry about, um, you know, COVID in certain respects with masks and all that stuff. So we've kind of tried to make it as safe as possible, where they have a normal experience going through PE with us.
Yeah, that's excellent and good to hear. All righty,
Hmm.
coach, as we start talking about the idea of getting back into transition on defense, let's kind of start at the fundamental level. What are your fundamental principles for you and your staff when you're coaching your players about what needs to happen for players to get back effectively in transition?
Yeah, of course. I think the first thing is making sure that our transition defense fits into our philosophy on how we want to play, both offensively and defensively. Making sure that all the phases of the game are kind of, for us, fit together seamlessly. That way, our 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 players are understanding why we're doing what we're doing, both offensively and then defensively, which transition fits, right into that key phase that, getting back is very, very important for us. So, we tell our guys constantly that we don't want to give up any easy opportunities, any easy layups, any easy early offense, that we can take away
Hmm.
if possible. So, making sure that it fits and understanding what's important to us defensively. So, the key foundations, the very first ones would be not giving up easy layups, not giving up early offense, forcing other teams to play us in our half court defense. I think if we can get teams into our half court defense where they have to go up against us set, then we'll be more successful than we won't.
And I kind of alluded to this at the beginning, though. The teams that you're playing in your region, in your area, are they looking to run up and down the court and run up the score like a track meet, like I mentioned earlier? Is that kind of the norm?
Yeah, especially here locally, we do have a lot of teams that are trying to push the ball as hard as they can and get those easy opportunities, get those easy early looks at the basket to have the scores in the high 60s, 70s, those type. But also, it's for us, the goal every year is trying to advance in the Texas State playoffs. And, Texas is a huge state with a ton of great basketball and great athletes. And those, once you start getting out of the El Paso region, you start going further east, there's great athletes. And if you don't make a concerted effort to get back and try and force them into half court offense, you can get run out of the gym very, very easily. And it's kind of like a snowball effect. Once they start feeling really good about themselves in transition, then it's kind of like it's hard to stop. It's hard to put the genie back in the bottle.
Yeah. And I think that it's one of those things that is such a huge momentum creator. And, even just being able to get up and down the court in, just a couple seconds and, hit that guy for that transition free, or just, that breakaway dunk or something like that. It's like, yeah, it's 2 points or 3 points, but man, you can just see games get away from you quickly, and teams get pretty rattled when all of a sudden it's like a missed shot and blink. And before you know it, like, oh, well, they just scored. And now it's like, oh, now what do we got to do? Like, what just happened? They just scored on us, sort of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So when you're thinking about the idea of, getting your guys back in transition, what are the things you're looking to stop? And in other words, what are some of the habits that you see other teams try to run in their transition offense that like, okay, we got to take this away because these are the things that the other team's looking to do right away when they get the ball out in transition?
Sure. So kind of like you alluded to, we've got some great athletes in the state of Texas, and especially in our area, that can do a lot of things. So we've got, especially right now, we've got a guy that's probably top 20 in his class, out of Chapin High School, that can grab a rebound and he can beat you down the court off a dribble on his own. So we've got a ton of guys that can do that, that are grab and go guys that, as soon as they get the ball, they're gone, and their teammates know they got to fill those lanes, and they're looking for easy opportunities right away. So that's number one. We've got to make sure that with those guys, they see a wall coming down the floor. While they're dribbling down the floor, they see a wall, and they've got to make a decision to kick it out instead of continue to penetrate to our basket. Another one would be kind of like pitch aheads early, trying to get those outlets early and up the floor. Trying to look for their guards. We've got some really good guards in the city also that do a good job of looking ahead and aren't selfish with the dribble. So if they see a teammate open early, they're going to hit them. So that guy can make a decision down the court, whether that's, continue to attack the paint, or, hit a jumper or kick out for a three. And then another one would be, running corners, trying to get those corner threes off as fast as possible, running as wide as they can with as much depth as they can. So those are some early actions that we see a lot of out of transition. And we're just, really trying to get back and force them to, kick it back around, maybe get into their secondary actions, or, get into their half court actions.
And to follow up with that, what do you think is something that you think in general other coaches, or just coaches in general, should be like most aware of and work on stopping? Is it the ball handler? Is it that outlet to the three? Is there anything in particular? Or is it kind of like got to be ready for all of it? Or is there one that you kind of see that sort of dominates in terms of a transition action over the others?
I think right away it's making sure that we stop the ball handler and making sure that he doesn't get a full head of steam, going down on our defense or on our transition defense. We don't want him to continue to go north and south. We want to force the ball and the ball handler to go east and west. So if we can get that ball handler to go, towards the sideline instead of down towards our basket, we feel like we have a really good chance of stopping that initial push. But with that being said, we do drill. All right, once we do get that guy going east and west instead of north and south, what do we do after that? So the kick out threes, the rim runner type stuff. So it's about putting those early pieces together in the full scope of what we're trying to do transition wise, and then into our half court. So I would say number one is stopping the basketball for us. And then number two is that first pass out. Where's that first pass out going to be? If that's out to the corners, if that's out to a, to a rim runner, whatever the case is after that.
And so let's kind of break this down in so those listening can kind of get a sense of what a typical, I mean, there's no transition opportunity that's necessarily typical, but kind of like a transition, what an opportunity would look like on defense. So shot goes up, they get the board, they're looking to go out and transition. Are there just certain principles that your guys need to know, certain spots they need to do, certain rules they need to follow? What is sort of the situation for the five guys, and what is their sort of responsibility in a typical, I know I use that word, even though, like I said, no situation's typical, but in a typical transition opportunity, where do your five guys know, where do they got to go, and what is their kind of responsibility and role?
Sure. So for us, it starts early. We designate get back guys and crashers. So get back guys, meaning their role as soon as we shoot the ball, their role is to start getting back on defense, with the exception of them being a shooter. So if they're a shooter, if they take the shot, then they're not responsible at that possession of getting back. But we do have guys that are designated on a shot to make sure that they're starting their sprint back on defense. And then we got guys that are crashers. So they're always going to be designated crashers. And we do this very, very early on in our season. So before we have our first scrimmages, we label usually our guards as get back guys. There are a few guards here and there. We did have one this year where he was a great offensive rebounder. So we wanted to play to his strengths. He was going to be a crasher. He wasn't going to be a get back guy. So we have those designated early on, and that comes with, watching them through summer, watching them in our fall leagues that we're playing, and we don't have those constraints on them at that time. And we let them play, and we see kind of what they're good at, what they can do, what they can bring to the team. And if we know, this guy might be better served getting back, then he's going to be a get back guy for us throughout the year instead of, crashing. One thing that we found, especially at the high school level, if we didn't give them these labels early on, they're kind of lost in no man's land. And what I mean by that is, for a guard, it's easy to kind of get lost on that 3-point line. If one of your teammates shoots the basketball, you kind of you're not crashing, you're not getting back, you're kind of just stuck on that 3-point line, not really doing, anything. So we have those labels for our guys to be very, very clear on what we expect of them on every possession. So for our get back guys, the first 3 steps are crucial for us. We want to sprint as hard as we can those first three steps with our head down, kind of like a track sprinter coming out of the blocks, and kind of race. We tell them we want to race to the paint. For us, we're a pack line defensive team, so everything's predicated on protecting our paint. So it could be 2 guys at a time, it could be 3, depending on the situation or who we have in the game at the time. But they're sprinting to the paint, and we say whoever wins the race, you're going to have your head under the basket. The guy that loses the race is going to be at the top of the key. Free throw line, depending on if we need to extend up a little bit, then we do top of the key 3-point line. So those are the initial roles as far as get back guys. The crashers, the guys going after the offensive rebound, once the other team secures the possession, again, it's a track meet. We're starting off the block. We're focusing on those sprints, making sure our head's down, getting to the paint. And then from the paint, we feel like we can communicate well enough that we can start communicating our matchups and things of that nature. But those are the first kind of building blocks off of it. And then from there, we communicate as to what we're doing and who we're guarding on our matchups at that time.
And you said that this is something that happens, like you establish this kind of right away. If I remember correctly, you kind of get a sense of like where some of your guys are at? You talked about like crashers and get back guys. Some of your guards might end up being crashers and being really excelling at that. But what's kind of like the timetable where it's like, all right, this is, we got to establish this right now, what everyone's role is and know what they got to do. Like how quickly does that sort of become formulated?
Sure. So we have that in probably our second or third official practice of the season. And that's a good week and a half out from our first scrimmage of the year. And again, that comes with knowing our personnel, knowing what they're each good at, what they can bring, defensively to the table. So that goes in right away. That way we're consistent with it from the very beginning, and that lasts, throughout the year as needed. We can make adjustments here and there. They're not wholesale adjustments. Like we're gonna, sometimes we play a lot of 4 guards. So sometimes we have 3 guard. As I mentioned, one of our guards was a crasher. So sometimes 3 guards are getting back. Sometimes, it's 2 guards. Once we start making rotation subs, 2 guards are getting back. But they are always, consistent, and they know what's expected of them. I don't have to tell them, every game or every practice, you're a get back guy. They know it from very early on.
And I'm curious if these roles are something that, like, how long is it before it's just instinctive once they have those roles a few practices in, and let's say you're running through a situation that involves transition defense, is it sort of just like they're not thinking and everyone's immediately crashing and the ones who know to get back are getting back? Is there any delay in that? I'm just curious about how quickly it just becomes like a habit and just something that they can just do without like even having to think about it and getting right into their spots.
Sure. And I'd be lying to you if I said, it's immediate, because it's not. With high school age students, repetition is kind of king. So, kind of midway through season, it's not as prevalent, but again, I'd be lying to you if I said, we wouldn't have to do that every day and rep it every day. We do have during game days and things like that, we do have a designated coach that their job is to, and a lot of times it's me, their job is to yell who's got back once we shoot the ball, during the game, just as a constant reminder, all right, yeah, I hear that. I can hear that from the bench. I know that's my job. And it's not so much, it's just trying to reinforce what they already know, their habit that they've already built. It's just reinforcing it, for us, just to make sure that we've got all our bases covered, during the game. So we do have that every single game. I'm calling who's got back on an offensive possession once we shoot the ball.
And what's the expectation in terms of communication from your players? What are you expecting to hear on the court as those transition opportunities are starting?
Sure. So again, our get back guys are kind of like the quarterback of the defense. They can kind of see everything unfolding ahead of them if they beat everybody else down the paint as they should, to the paint as they should. So they're kind of the ones leading the communication. They're communicating first with each other if it's 2 or 3, kind of saying who's got the ball, who's got first pass. And once that's communicated, then as our other, our crashers, the guys that were going for the rebounds, then it's all right, now you got to communicate to these guys. All right, where are the matchups? And we talk very, very early on, again, as far as transition, it's not going to be pretty all the time. You're going to have to have mismatched matchups at times. A big might be guarding a guard or vice versa. So for that possession, we've got to stay in those matchups until we can get things under control and we feel good about it. If switches need to be made or what have you, but those are the type of things that need to be communicated early from our get back guards. And then we expect our post players to also communicate as they're coming down the floor. Once they get past half court, they kind of got their head in a swivel running to the paint. looking at, okay, where's this next matchup going to happen? Where am I going to, fit into our defense here? And they're calling it out early. So if they're, running close to a guard off the 3-point line, and they're closest to that guard, they're yelling out, I've got this player, I've got this number, whatever that matchup is. But it happens early in the process.
Yeah, and because I think that that's one of the things that I think all of us as coaches, and I'm sure you share this too, are always looking to improve. We're always hoping that we have our team that's like communicating really well on the court. And as we as coaches, we don't want to be the ones having to yell out everything. And like you said, I think one of the things that you've discovered, and a lot of us coaches know, that if it's not communicated or those roles aren't defined, then the players won't really know where to go or what they're supposed to do. And then, like you said, you end up with those situations, right, where they're just kind of standing out the 3-point line, no communication, not really filling up a role, and then things are just going right by them and they're not really involved.
Yeah, exactly. And again, as we kind of alluded to earlier in the conversation, where we're looking to be every year is a consistent, playoff team making playoff runs. And once you get past, once you start getting into the playoffs, it's very, very hard to not be a good communicating team and advance. So, that's always kind of the focus for us. And we try and harp on that every day. It's communication. It's making sure you're following your habits and your roles, so that not only can you do your job, but your teammates can also do their job. Because, if one person isn't doing their job, it kind of puts a chink in the armor, and, things can go haywire from there.
You mentioned the idea of the crash, and I'm really interested about what is the expectation for somebody who's crashing. I not they're not going to be getting boards every single time. So what is like a success criteria? How do you kind of define whether or not the crasher is doing the job that they're supposed to be doing?
So first of all, it's making sure, and it's something that you can't really quantify, but it's showing effort towards the offensive boards, right? That's the first thing we want to see. If we see that our crashers are kind of lost in no man's land, or they're not, putting forth the effort to go after the offensive rebound, or try and, earn us a second chance point or a second chance at the basket, that's a huge red flag for us. And we try and figure out why is that? Why aren't you, if you're a crasher, why aren't you crashing the boards as hard as you're supposed to? Is it effort? Is it, lack of focus? What is it? And then if we can't figure that out, then we're going to find somebody who's ready to fill that role that might be on the bench, and see if we can't get that from them. So that's number one, is effort. How hard are you attacking the offensive glass? And if you're not, then you're going to probably find yourself on the bench, if that's kind of a recurring theme with you. The second thing is charting offensive rebounds, and charting those offensive rebounds. How well are we doing on the offensive glass as a whole? And then as individuals, how many are you getting a game? Okay, we see you only got one this game. And then, going back, it's a lot of going back and reviewing film as far as, why did this happen? Were you just out of the area? Are we again, not focused on where the ball's being shot from and knowing where to go off of the shot? So it's effort, then it's charting how many are we getting as a team and individually. And those are really three keys that we look at to see if we're doing a good enough job at it or not.
And when, I think one of the things that I've always gotten nervous a little bit about, sometimes you have those crashes on that offensive rebounding, is sometimes those fouls, and those cheap fouls, or you give up that rebound and you think you should have had it, so you try to overcompensate and play really hard on the ball, then, you end up reaching in or giving up a cheap foul somewhere along the way. So is that something that you've had to worry about? Have your players been able to sort of reel themselves in if maybe they're a crasher and, that board doesn't quite go that way? Like, I'm going to ask later about avoiding fouls when the team's running out in transition, but just on terms of crashing for offensive rebounds, have you found that you and your guys have been able to kind of stay away from like cheap fouls, all the way at the other end of the basket?
Yeah, I think with the style of defense that we play, we don't do a lot of full court pressing or full court trapping, as it will. So, we really harp on it to get back to the paint. If we don't secure the rebound, we're on these guys early about sprinting to the paint. If you don't get the rebound, that's your number one job right after. Sprint to the paint. Of course, we do have those occasional situations where, guy gets frustrated on not getting that board, and he'll pick up a cheap foul here and there. But for the most part, I think with being very, very clear on why we're doing what we're doing and how we need it to be done, it's kind of eliminated some of those early cheap fouls that you can pick up, as you were mentioning, kind of getting frustrated and reaching in early or trying to trap the ball and picking up one of those fouls off of the rebound. That's not our identity as far as defensively. So again, it's trying to be as clear as we possibly can and consistent as we possibly can, and telling our guys, as soon as if you don't get that rebound, your number one job is to sprint to the paint so we can get our defense set. So we have been able to avoid those early cheap fouls, but again, when we you're coaching high school players, that sometimes isn't always the case, but you kind of learn to live with the good and the bad at times.
And let me ask about on the other end, somebody who, harps a lot on offensive transition, getting into a player, getting them to initiating that contact to draw a foul, and maybe sometimes fouls that maybe we shouldn't get, but we know that if we initiate some contact, we'll get them. Is there anything in particular that you and your program do to avoid picking up fouls or avoid those fouls when a guy is going in transition and going hard to the basket? Or is it, just get your hands up and do the best you can and hope it works out? How do you try to avoid those fouls when the other team's taking it strong to the basket?
No, it's very hard, especially when you have a team that's very well coached. We got a lot of well coached teams here in our area, and they know, once you start getting that full head of steam down to your basket, it's very hard to stop. So we talk a lot about staying disciplined and staying down in our stance, staying down, not getting too high, not jumping at people. Especially if they're, 30, 35 feet away from the basket, penetrating. We don't want to jump at people. We want to stay down in our stance and make them run into us. So another thing we teach, and, like a lot of people, is, trying to get to our positions early, trying to get to our spots early, to take charges. So we use the aggressiveness of the offense against them, by being early to our spots, by being, engaged early, staying down, staying in a great stance, but moving to our spots, sprinting to our spots early in order to turn that around into an offensive foul instead of a defensive foul. Now, again, I'd be lying to you if I said that that's the case all the time, because again, if we're trying to be aggressive in stopping the transition offense, and we have terms like, fight the ball out of the paint, or, we're trying to be aggressive in keeping you out of our paint, we're going to pick up a few fouls here and there. So we do our best at staying down and taking good charges, but, again, we got to take the good with the bad. I think I'd rather pick up a foul, 30, 35 feet away from the basket than allowing a guy get to the paint and then pick up get an and one or an opportunity like that.
And I think that, that's something that I've really realized is I could almost tell too sometimes, like when a player, like, all right, they're inside the 3-point line going to the basket, like it's going to be a foul. Just because I just know, like, in some cases, you might even know the refs that you have, and you're like, they're blowing the whistle against us. We're not getting this call, and so like you said, it's like, well, people don't like fouls, like any fouls, or people get frustrated at fouls 35, 40 feet from the basket, but then it's like, well, if you don't take a gamble there, like you said, it's over, because that whistle's getting blown, and maybe you can get a charge. Charges are, like you said, the charges are sometimes difficult to get down, and there is definitely a science to it, and I'm sure this. If you don't practice charges, they don't end up turning out pretty if you don't practice or emphasize them a lot. So
right. And another thing with that is we're trying to get you in a half court offensive set, not in transition. So we're very big on, if we pick up an early foul and the foul count's not, something ridiculous, where they're in the double bonus super early on in the half or late in the game, we're okay with taking one if that means they're going to have to play against our half court defense. So, that's something that we do discuss with our players is, we're not trying to give anything up. We're not trying to give up cheap fouls or, just reach for the sake of reaching or commit, something that could be called an intentional foul. But by any means necessary, we're trying to play in the half court.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I get you. And you mentioned about trying to get into getting the other team into whatever their half court offense is. So let's just talk about, how do your transition defensive principles, how do those lead right into what you and your staff like to do in the half court?
Sure. So as I mentioned before, we're really a pack line defensive team, defensive oriented team, and the main principles of pack line defense is to deter the other team from getting penetration into your paint. You're trying to force as many contested 3-point shots, contested long range twos as you possibly can. So our transition, again, is predicated on our get back guys and our crashers, getting to that paint and then building a wall around our paint to where we're not allowing that north and south action. We're forcing east and west. We're forcing dribbles east and west. We're forcing passes east and west. Around the 3-point line if we can, with hard closeouts, with contested, all shots being contested. So if we execute properly, our transition is going to force the ball to stop and move from side to side instead of north and south, which leads right into our pack line defense of, okay, now we're in our set, now we're half court set. Now our half court defense is set. So now you're going to have to attack us going east and west, because it's going to be very hard for you to get into our paint. So, that's where it all starts. We're trying to build that wall around the paint as early as we possibly can.
Yeah. And how much of that has to be worked on in practice? Because, that it isn't necessarily intuitive or necessarily easy to or fall back into, at least the way I'm thinking about it. I'm imagining that there's got to be a lot of work in terms of the drills or the things that you do in practice in order to make that as smooth of a sequence as possible.
Yeah, you're right. It does take a lot of repetition, and we start with that really early. We start with our defensive principles really, really early. In our off season, when we're allowed to teach during our class periods and things like that, we start with those principles very early on in the process, and then it continues through our early practices and through our really throughout the entire season. It's just constant repetition and constant reinforcement of, this is what we do and this is why we do it. This is how we're trying to have our transition set so that it leads right into our half court defense. And then we have a ton of breakdown drills as far as how we're getting back in transition, and then how we're playing out of it. And then we go a lot of live competition as well with that, so that it's constantly being reinforced by us coaches, but also through them, playing it out in practice and seeing different situations like that.
And what I'm getting the sense of and just hearing the way that you talk about it is that this idea of having transition defense and getting it right into whatever you do in half court almost has to be like broken down into pieces, or like broken down into little steps, and almost like if you try to present the big picture of what you're trying to do, like it seems like that would be overwhelming to your players, but like focusing on like specific roles, responsibilities, and like the different pieces involved seems like that's something that like your players are a lot more it's a lot easier for them to sort of comprehend and feel confident in.
Yes, exactly. It's kind of breaking it, it's like you mentioned in it, it's kind of like a puzzle. You put all those pieces together. You don't just, looking at the whole picture can kind of be a little overwhelming. So you got to put it piece by piece. You give them that, what the end product might be, but all right, let's focus in on this piece right here. And then we build it out from there. So, it could be a lot of breakdown stuff like 1-on-1s, 2-on-2s, 3-on-3s, and then you build it up to the 5-on-5, and then you do it again. You do it the next day the same way, or with a few different variations as far as drills, but you're constantly building it up and then taking it back to the building block, building it up, taking it back to the building block. That way they understand from the very foundation of it, why do we do this? And how can we execute it 1-on-1, then 2-on-2, 3-on-3, 4-on-4, and then it builds it to the 5-on-5, where once they get to that point and we've repped it enough in practice, then it becomes a little bit easier for them to see the big picture and execute the big picture.
Are there things in particular that you really, really like to do in like a 1-on-1, 2-on-2 and that breakdown session, or anything that you find is like really effective in simulating what you're trying to do on your transition defense?
Yeah, it's going from, 1-on-0, how you're getting back 1-on-0, 1-on no offense, and then 2-on-no offense, and then starting adding, the 1-on-1, the 2-on-2, the 3-on-3 live situations. So really starting off at the very, very basic. Okay, we're 1-on-0. We add a lot of stuff into what we do off of, even offensive movements, offensive guard positioning and stuff like that. So we'll go, okay, we're attacking the basket here on offense. You're taking a jumper, and then you're getting back on defense on your own. Where you get into, if you're the first guy down the floor, your head's under the basket, and you're doing that on air, so you're not going against anybody offensively. And then we'll add to that. Okay, now you got a teammate with you. You guys are in offensive action. You shoot the basketball, and now both of you are get back guys. So you're getting back. You're racing down to the paint. One of you has your head under the basket. The other's at the top of the key on air. And then we're building that 3-on-0, same thing. 4-on-0, same thing. And then we build it with our offense coming at you after that. So those are really, really key aspects for us, making sure that they understand on air first, and then putting in the live components after that.
And I think that one of the toughest parts with the process that you talked about is, I imagine that building that up could potentially eat up and take up a lot of time of your practice, and it's not something that you can just sort of throw out there and just do in a couple minutes and sort of move on. Like, it's got to be a focus, and it's got to be a priority for your program, because I can imagine, you can probably speak to, specifically in terms of time, like this is something you really got to set aside time and really commit to. Otherwise it's not going to look the way you want it to in practice, or in an actual game situation, excuse me.
Sure. I mean, that's one of the components of it. We were very big on 4 phases of the game. Offense, half court offense, transition defense, transition offense, half court offense. So we take time on each of those phases, and we try and give it its proper due. Now, again, we don't spend an inordinate amount of time on it as far as like, an hour or so, but we do these things consistently every day to where our players are understanding and they can move from one thing to another because they've had consistent work on it before and the practices leading up to it and things like that. So it's, it's something that we might, take 15 minutes every day doing or 20 minutes every day doing, but they understand they need to move through it as quick as possible. And once they start getting comfortable with what we're doing, they can move rather quick through it, and they don't have to spend, towards the end of the season, we don't have to spend those 15 or 20 minutes. It can be, cut down even to about 10 minutes or a 5-minute really, really fast review of it. And they'll still have everything that we've built over the year with that. So it does take time. It is a process, but we're very committed to it from the beginning of the season all the way to the end of it. So our guys feel very, very comfortable in what they're doing at the end of the season when we feel like it's most important.
And I want to ask too, this is always something that is always personally interesting to me. And that's in those practice situations as you're building, like you said, the 1-on-0, the 1-on-1, the 2-on-2, how do you keep the intensity and simulate not only the intensity but also the idea of correct decision making and making sure everybody's correctly doing their roles and kind of prepared for all the different potential situations a team might do in transition offense? How do you kind of simulate that? Is it more of a focus on really on like the intensity level being there and then knowing your roles and then sort of varying it? How do you kind of make it as authentic as possible, both kind of with the correct reads and also just with the intensity level in practice so that it translates well to a game situation?
Sure. So we hold our players very, very accountable for, their effort every single day and everything that we try and do. Again, we understand that they're high school level kids and sometimes they might not have that effort every day, but we feel like it's our job to make sure that we are a team that's going to give as much effort as we possibly can to each other every day. Whether that means, your teammates are kind of are dragging you through something that you might feel, you can't get through at that point, but we hold each other, like as coaches, we hold them accountable, but once they take ownership of what we're doing, they really hold themselves accountable for that. And you see the intensity in our practices. We're a very loud team. We pride ourselves on being loud because we think, the louder we are, the more energy we bring, the more intensity and spirit we're going to bring on the defensive side. But along with that, we do a lot of live competition, and we like to keep score of what we're doing. So we'll always split, the team into our colors, our school colors, which are red and white or red and gray, depending on the uniform that we have on, the practice uniform they have on. And then we'll go live. We'll go through our drills live or our situations live, and we'll keep score. And we'll hold the team that wins. They might get a sprint off, or they might get a set of push-ups off, or what have you. So, and those type of competitions is something that we do every day. We'll play to 4 points, or we'll play to 7 points, or we'll have the clock going, and for a 5-minute segment, this is what we're doing. And you guys, whoever scores the most points, whoever has the most, defensive stops or offensive, however, we're keeping score of that. So they always can see where they stand against each other. But also, if they're doing the job or not, it's going to be very evident by, okay, you guys are getting your butts kicked a little bit today because, the score is 4-0, obviously your effort wasn't there or you weren't executing. So those are things we talk about every day, and those are things we do every day with our drills defensively and in transition.
I like the idea of keeping score in particular. I think something that the players can like visibly see or keep track of. Like it's one of the easiest ways I think to hold people accountable, because the scoreboard or the numbers or whatever you use to keep track of it, it just never lies.
Right.
Yeah. And
right.
what I guess sort of as we start to wind down, like what have you, by emphasizing defensive transition and been really working on it, what have you just seen in general? Like what gains have you seen? Have you really taken teams out of what they like to do by slowing them down in the half court? Have you found that a lot of teams even sometimes struggle when they get in the half court? Because I know personally that's something I've found. Like by emphasizing defensive transition, how have you and your staff really just been able to kind of change the complexion of some games in general?
Yeah, I think it's all predicated on offensively. We're trying, everybody's trying to get the easiest basket
I know I am.
possible, right? We're trying to get the easiest basket possible, which are for high school level kids, that's going to be a layup or a shot really close to the basket in the paint. I know a bunch of people think they're, Steph Curry at this point, taking threes from 30 feet out, but ultimately it comes back down to those easy layup opportunities, easy paint shots. So what we found is if we can take away those easy early opportunities, when you're not when an offensive player is having to go against 5 as opposed to 1 or 2, it's an easier decision for an offensive player to go against 1 or 2 and be able to make a move on one person and, be in open space where they can lay the ball in. That's a little bit easier than having to, decipher a defense or play against help defense or, try and create spacing offensively to where you can have, a better shot at or an easier opportunity. So for us, it's really about, really, really taking away those easy layups. We feel, again, if we can get you into that half court set where you're having to go against all 5 of us, as opposed to 1-on-1 or 2-on-2, fast break with a ton of space, you're going to have a tougher time against us when we're set. So, that's what we're really trying to get at. And we have found that, when teams have to play in the half court, kids have to do a little bit more thinking and they have to make more decisions that are going to impact their team offensively. So we want them to have to make as many decisions as they possibly can in order to be successful against our defense. And don't get me wrong, they do make a lot of great decisions, and it doesn't always work, but that's what we feel is very important to us. So we stick with that.
Yeah, I like the idea of, like, I think transition offense in general, I think that there's a lot more instinct. I don't know, you just sort of are getting the ball out and you're getting after it, that if you're able to just sort of slow that action down and bring things back to a half court situation, you're forcing the other team to now like have to adjust and get out of like, oh, we were ready to just run right up the court. Now we got to completely slow this down, mentally reset and do whatever our half court offense is. And, in some cases that might be enough, just having to make the players have to transition and slow down to that half court offense. Even that might be enough to get a victory in your half court, in your pack line defense, like you mentioned.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So to wrap up, Coach, there's a couple questions I ask every guest. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here with this first one. Thinking back on your coaching career, and I know you've had a lot of stops along the way, what is a coaching moment of yours that you think others listening can learn from?
As in the position that I'm at right now, I'm a varsity assistant coach, an aspiring head coach one day. I got a very, very good piece of advice from my current head coach. And he just said, enjoy being an assistant, enjoy it. There's a ton, and us that have been assistants and even that have made that transition to being head coaches, we understand there's a ton more that you have to consider on a day-to-day basis than just basketball. And as an assistant, you're very, very fortunate that most of your focus, I wouldn't say all of your focus, because there is, things here and there that you do need to focus in on away from basketball, but your focus is predominantly basketball, the X's and O's, how your team is, the team chemistry, the team culture, that type of stuff. So he just told me, he said, enjoy it, enjoy being able to just focus on this, be patient, your time will come, and those type of things, especially for a younger coach that really wants to make that transition as fast as possible, or, in the shortest amount of time, take a step back and enjoy it. I've been, ever since he told me that, I've been able to step back and, enjoy things, enjoy, being able to compete with the teams that we've had, being able to enjoy, the little things like the locker room, the bus rides, and also, the at home situation, having that work-life balance, with a family and things like that, that your time is very valuable. So enjoy it. Not that head coaches can't make that work-life balance, but there is a lot more time, constraints and,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
obligations.
Yeah,
So
there you
that
go.
would kind of be that was a big moment in my, coaching career that really helped me out and put some perspective on what I was trying to accomplish.
Somebody told me once, when you're an assistant coach, you just get to be the coach. When you're the head coach, you're the leader of the program, which is a little bit of actually a much different role, much different things
Yes,
involved in
exactly.
it. So yeah, assistant coach get to focus a lot on the coaching and the basketball, the fun stuff, so to speak, and the head
Yes.
coach gets the some of the dirty work, that maybe the behind the scenes
Right.
stuff that people don't see. So I like that. Awesome. To wrap up, Coach, I give every guest what I call a 60-second soapbox. It's your platform to get out a final message, closing thought, final idea, something you just want to leave the listeners with, and you can take it any direction you want. So I'm just going to open it up, give you the floor, and let you take it from here.
Yeah. First off, just thank you again for the opportunity. I mean, this is a very cool opportunity for me, being, an assistant coach, and, listening to some of your other podcasts. People have said the same, giving the average coach a chance to, connect. And that's something that I'm really, really, really big on, is connecting and networking and finding opportunities to listen to podcasts, to like yours, or going to coaching clinics, watching YouTube videos. Twitter has been just an amazing tool that I've been able to use to connect with people, to have different opportunities. And I think, a lot more coaches should do it if they haven't already started. It's something that can really help you out, and also, validate some of the ideas that you have, as far as what your philosophies are, what your thinking is. Listening to some of your podcasts, and other podcasts that I listen to, or videos, it's validation on what you're doing, to continue it. But it's also, ways to develop. So if you see an idea, you hear an idea, it's a chance for you to continue to grow. And that's one thing that I feel very blessed to be able to do, and fortunate enough to do. And like an opportunity like this, just to collaborate with you and other coaches, it's just something that I find can be very invaluable, and I think more people should take advantage of it.
Absolutely. And social media and things like Twitter, it's kind of like, it depends on how you use it. Could be quite the interesting negative tool if you let it become that way. But like you mentioned, if you use it to connect and learn from others and have those interactions, like, there's just so much good stuff out there, and so many coaches like yourself are just willing to talk and willing to share ideas. And yeah, like, if you're not out there on some form of social media to work on your game as a coach, like you said, you're definitely missing out. That's for sure.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. Well, Coach, I really appreciate you spending some time talking about your program, defensive philosophy, practice, getting back in transition, all that good stuff. I know that uh, it's so valuable, as we talked about, the game just going up and down, and it's like a track meet, people flying up and down to, be able to get back in transition and then get back in your half court defensive look. So really appreciate it. Good luck as you get into the summer, as you get into next year. And eventually that head coaching job will be coming your way. So good luck when that happens too. Thank you so much, Coach, for taking the time to talk
Thank
to us.
you. Thank you very much.
Awesome. And thank you guys for joining us. This was another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast, and we will see you guys next.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.